Thank you for being here. It's super beautiful. Today's live was supposed to be done 2 days ago, but I was like mad working on stuff, and it's okay because it's totally relevant to working and it's part of the story. So I wanted to, hi Louie, I wanted to chat about the mental illness and food and fasting, because I've been fasting for 14, 15, 16 days, something like that. So I've been basically subsisting on grape juice and lemon juice mixed together and then mixed with the psyllium bentonite charcoal clay. And that seems like not so awesome and not so yummy, but it's actually really yummy. And the interesting thing is this is the second time I've done it since May. The first time I did 21 days, and this has been infinitely easier, and it's interesting as to why. So basically, it's been so fascinating to like remove all of the belief systems that I've got going on around food. Most people have really big stories around food. Food is a challenging thing. There's a lot of emotional eating going on. And the interesting thing about fasting is that most people, when they're fasting, they're doing like a lemon juice or something, but it's not necessarily getting to the heart of the matter. And the heart of the matter is that through the process of eating all of the refined food products that people have in their lives, they are basically creating toxicity in our bodies. If you think about like our bodies and the amount of food that goes into them compared to when we were hunter-gatherers, like our physical bodies haven't evolved that much. So when our hunter-gatherer bodies, eat like massive amounts of processed food, it sits in our stomach, it starts to rot and digest. That's where indigestion comes from. That's where, the experience of, gas and diarrhea and constipation. And I was doing an ad recently for the New Earth Expo, because I do their graphic design, and it was for this nutritional thing, and I did some research, and it said that 20 million Canadians experience some form of like heartburn, acid reflux, indigestion, constipation, diarrhea, etc., etc., etc. And I was just like, 20 million, like, isn't the population of Canada only like 40 million? It's like half of us, like half of the people. And I was like, like I got super intense, and I'm like doing this fast to help clean that stuff out of my body. Basically, my understanding is that there's this like snot that builds up, but in your intestines, called mucoid plaque, and it like stores all this, like all these bacterias, these parasites, these molds and yeasts, and like that's candida. That's where, and this is where the parts of our bodies that get really toxic come from. And I learned about this maybe about 2 years ago when I started hearing about GAP, so gut and psychology syndrome, which is the idea of that what's happening in our guts has a relationship with our mental space, and that I just need to laugh because I feel like I'm umming all over the place, but it's okay. So the guts has to do with our mental space. So basically like toxicity in the gut. So this mucoid plaque that lives there in most people, unless you've done like a lot of clean eating, cleansing, etc., and have removed it, everybody has some. And in people that are, more obese, more mentally ill, it's a lot more because they've got a lot more toxicity going on. And then the food creates this like cycle. So, it's really fascinating because over the past, 15 days, I've been removing this from my body. It's kind of gross, but also like no grosser than pooping normally. And, yes, I poop. And so do you. And the interesting thing is that in the removal of this, what I've found is that, the first time I did this, I had so many cravings. Like it was so challenging. It was so difficult to not be eating the different things that I normally eat. And when I was a teenager, I was eating, pasta and cheese sauce like 4 times a day, and massive amounts of them. And I was like 200 pounds, like I kid you not. I was chunky, and it was just it was really challenging being like that. I didn't feel very good about myself. I didn't feel very good about my body, and also, there was this experience of depression. When I started writing the Joygasm book, I I was looking back through my life and looking at the different patterns and trying to understand what was happening, and I realized that I had been depressed since I was 11 or 10 when we moved to Calgary. It was a really big trauma for me, and I realized I had been depressed like that whole time, all the way through my teenage years. It got worse, you know, in my later teens. My diet got worse because my mom was like, I can't control what she eats. I started feeding myself. It got worse. I used to just like, I would make like muffin dough. My mom makes lots of homemade breads and good stuff, so I knew how to make muffins. So I would just like make muffin batter and like just eat it raw, like eggs and flour and sugar and a little bit of spices and something, and like that was like a thing that I would eat. And then, you know, in my early 20s, I had this health crisis where, you know, after giving birth to Alex, I went into this massive depression. I was pretty depressed beforehand, and also the, you know, the abuse and stuff, and it, sorry, it's challenging. Yeah, and so there was this cycle, you know, and I would go into these really high highs. I'd be like, okay, let's do things. Life is magical. It's beautiful. Let's go. Ah! And then I would, and like full of adrenaline, full of excitement, like, and then I would just crash and cry for days on end. And they would go in little cycles in my life, but also big cycles, really dependent on the world around me, the things outside of me. You know, was my relationship going well? Was my relationship not going well? Was I making money? Was I not making money? Those things would radically impact my mood and my feelings about myself. And thanks for being here, Chuck and Carrie. I really appreciate it. And there's one more person, but it won't show me your name. Thank you. Yeah, so there was this experience of these radical highs and lows, and I was really not willing to engage with the medical system. I figured they would, like, I could look at myself enough to see, oh, like, I'm probably depressed, and if I go to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist or whatever, like, they're going to give me a bunch of drugs and numb me out. And I'd seen my sister on antidepressants at like 13, and I didn't want that for myself, so I set about healing it. Hi, Teresa. I set about healing it, you know, authentically from inside. And I went to all these healing classes, and I went to all these personal development things, and I did so much work on my mindset. I did so much work on, you know, positivity. Hi, Trent. Yeah, I did so much work on positivity and joygasm and aiming towards something beautiful, and my mindset was really amazing. But what I found is that I would also get really upset with life. Like, I would still go through these really highs and lows. I learned how to manage them better, but they were still there. And when I heard about, you know, the GAPS stuff, I began to realize that there was a correlation between eating, you know, breads, like giving into that urge to eat like bread and butter just for the sake of bread and butter, or, you know, or making something, or making a cake, or eating pancakes for breakfast and feeling really grumpy like an hour later. I realized that there was a correlation between those things, and that they were related. And it was explained to me, and I began to understand that the experience of eating those things came from a craving. You know, there was a lot of craving, a lot of emotional eating, like I feel lonely, a lot of emotional smoking too. And what I realized is that the body was craving these things, and then it would go into my body, and then it would go into my intestines, and those bacteria inside of it would like eat it up, and then when they die, like when there was no more, they would die off, and they would create this like angry reaction, and I would get hangry. Is that like hungry because or angry because you're hungry, right? And hangry was like a joke in our family. It was like this funny thing that we did to, you know, to talk about that experience. And it was beastly important to me all through Alex's young years that there was always snacks around, there was always something to eat, there was always something there. And it's been really radical for me to be on this fast, and to, you know, remove the normal food from my diet, and also to see the mucoid plaque come out of my body. Hi, Cameron. To see the plaque come out of my body, and to see that my experience was changing radically, and that those highs and lows weren't coming anymore, and I was just high. just high. Like, I have literally worked so hard, like full on, like I'm part of a sociocracy meetup. I'm like helping to organize intentional community here in Calgary. Like I'm organizing a homeschooling collective and a food collective and doing design work and running Joygasm and parenting and like all of that, you know, and homeschooling's bringing other people's kids into my life and like dating, and it's just like there's a lot going on, and it's been really spectacular to see that as a result of the fasting, like the emotional highs and lows, like I keep expecting to crash. And what I'm beginning to realize, like in these moments, like in the last week or so, is that like I don't need to crash anymore. There doesn't need to be that crash out from that like high, low, high, low, high, low. It can just be like I'm flying freaking high, and that's how I live my life. Hi Venus, beautiful to see you. Venus is an amazing food creator. He creates some of the world's best kombucha. Super glad to see you there. He's part of the food collective, and yeah, so I've been doing a lot of stuff. And I don't know if you've ever been involved in like a creative project where you're kind of just like, you know, you're working on stuff, you get like that manic state where you're just like you're super in the flow, super doing stuff, like super amazing and in the flow, and then all of a sudden you stop and you're like, oh, like, and you're super angry because you're hungry, and that whole bacterial cycle is like out of whack, and you need to eat something to make it better. Or like we were at a house meeting the other day, and I watched somebody have an absolute meltdown after not eating you know, breakfast. You know, our meeting went till like 10 and or 11. We started at 9, and they were just like, ah. And I was like, wow, I'm pretty fine. Like, that's really cool. And so it's been really gorgeous over the last couple days. I've been reintegrating food, you know, moving out of that like massive fasting space where it's just like your body's really not digesting, and moving back into digestion and seeing that like, oh, like actually, like I feel really healed, from that experience of that, you know, that painful high, low, the manic depressive or the bipolar, and that high can be a state of living. Yeah, it's super cool. Hi, Greg. Great to see you there. Yeah, Greg and I met in Australia like 10 years ago or something like that. Crazy. It's so beautiful. Back when I was super all over the place. And yeah, so I just sort of the realization that, you know, things are actually radically different now. And I used the word like recovered the other day to talk about the experience of the mental illness, the depression, the you know, all of those times that I got back together with my son's dad where I was super manic, I was super high, I was super like everything's perfect, I can like everything's amazing, and that now that like high, like life full of energy vibe can come without you know, without the lows, and it's really amazing. And also recognizing that the mental illness that people experience like can be really simply healed by changing what we're eating, even for as little as 3 days, and starting to clear that out, or by adding a few things to the diet that actually clean the digestive system instead of just like piling more food that continues to compost. And that on the backside of the fast, that you can experience the kind of health and vitality that, you know, most people only dream of. You can experience the kind of connection with yourself, you know, like when you're fasting, the energies are so high, life is so beautiful, but usually a lot of emotions come up too, and the emotions are a lot of the time connected to the fact that we are the bacterial load that lives in our intestines is like dying off. And if you think like, oh, it's just the intestines, like the intestine is like the largest organ in the body other than the skin, and we put absolute like toxins into it day after day after day, and in a lot of ways like we can't help it. I had this realization a while back that the human species is actually really beautiful, and the thing that's creating the destruction on the planet is the bacteria that are living parasitically within the human species. If you think about what is being cut down, trees, beautiful plants, etc., are being cut down, and what's being planted? Sugar. Corn for corn syrup, sugar cane, crops to produce cows, to produce dairy. So like that dairy, wheat, and sugar are like literally like propagating over the planet because of the human species, but not because the human species loves it so much, but because the human species is addicted to it and is being run on this like hangry cycle, this like addictive cycle from the bacterial and like fungus and mucus and like nasty like snot that's living in our intestines, and that we're not actually, a lot of people aren't actually running their own bodies. They're being run by their hunger and their cravings. And when I started to realize that, I was like, oh, the human species is like getting shit for something that they're not. I mean, we are doing it because we're empowering that, but at the same time, like, people aren't aware that they're being run by something outside of themselves. They're not aware like of even what it's like to be able to be living differently. And that's because that bacterial load is like gifted to us by our parents when we're born, like the father's sperm and the mom's egg, and then the father's contribution to the mom's body throughout her life. Like, we come into this, like the sperm like contains that bacterial load as much as the vaginal fluids do, and so we merge and we can become more mentally ill by sleeping with people who have mental illness, like, because they have that sick pathology of bacteria in our bodies. And when I realized that, I was like, oh my god, like, yikes, like, how much damage did I do? How much of the mental illness that I suffered after sleeping with an alcoholic who never ate food, just like subsisted on alcohol and pub food for 25 years. Like, how much of the illness that I experienced was a result of what I had put into my body through his sperm and through the sex we had. And I was just like, it's another reason to practice like joygasmic experiences with people before you realize you're ready to merge karma with them, and merge like fluids like that with people. What else do I want to say? I don't know. If anybody has questions, you can put questions in the comments. I'm happy to respond to that. I'm trying to think. Oh, the experience, the experience of living that high and coming off of the fast and being like, oh, like, I just straight up don't crave those things anymore. I just straight up like don't even have a desire. Like, somebody offered me cake the other day and I was like, no, like, not even a little bit. And there's so many delicious things that can be made that are super simple and actually super cheap, and so yeah, and it's just so good. There's just so many different ways, and especially as a mom, like, being freed from that idea that I needed to, when I did my first fast, I had this idea that I could fast if I was on my own, but that I couldn't possibly fast when my son was around. And now I'm cooking food for him. Hi, Charles. I'm cooking food for him and continuing to do my fast. I'm, when you're satisfied in what it is that you're doing and how you're living your life, then everything else seems more beautiful. It's like, oh, like, I'm happy with what I'm doing. And I want to touch on that a little bit. Like, I was obsessed for a long time. Like, when I started to find out about this gut and psychology stuff, that I was really obsessed with the idea that I had really damaged my son by how sick and like pathological my bacterial body and my intestines were, and my like vaginal system was when he was conceived and when he was born. And I was really worried that I had severely damaged him, and that by continuing to feed him the things that he liked, like by giving him like Rice Krispies and milk for breakfast, which is like his favorite. He eats at his dad's house and he's like, I love it, Mom, can I have it, please, please, please? And it's like, by continuing to feed him that, it was like so devastating to me to think that I was like injuring my child by the food that I'd been feeding him, and that my mom had like injured me by the food that she'd fed me, even though it was like whole food, happy, healthy stuff, or even organic versions of like things that still have those things that feed that bacterial. And it's it was really challenging for me. And what I realized is that when I cleaned out, what I realized is that I was projecting my worry for myself onto my kid. Okay? You hear that? It's like, I was worried about how fucked up my system was, and I knew it, but I was still eating his leftovers, because I had this idea that like eating that throwing food away was terrible. You know, that wasting food, and that came from my grandma having not enough food, and it's like ingrained in the body. And I could see it, but it took clearing the pathogenic parts of my body. Hi, Catherine. Hi, Jerry. It took clearing the pathogenic parts of my body that wanted to keep eating those things to be able to stop. And it took creating a hard line for a little while to be like, oh, like food, not food, food, not food, things I put in my body, not things I put in my body, you know, to be able to create that. Yeah. And so it's been really powerful. And so the invitation that I have for you is that my partner and I are designing, or he's designing, and I'm like helping with the marketing because that's what I do. And also just sharing, you know, but like, how do we reach people with this information? When I found out there were 20 million Canadians who suffered from some form of like gastrointestinal issues, I was like, what the fuck? That's like half the country. And so it's sparked within me this like desire to help, and I've seen how much it's impacted me. Like, as much as the mindset is an important part of recovering from depression and abuse, the physicality of it, like the physical body, is a really important part too, as is the community. You know, having community around you has helped so much in so many ways as well, and feeling of value as well, like feeling, you know, getting connected to your purpose. Those 4 things, when you intermingle them and you're working on all of them and you're able to make steps on all of them, like that is what it takes to heal from whatever it is that you're experiencing. And I'm open to help on like all of those areas, right? Like, if you're in Calgary, like there's potlucks twice a week. You're happy to have you join. You know, if you're not in Calgary, like we're doing Joygasms online, where there's the online training to help with the mental side of it. And if you're interested in the fasting, if you're interested in like getting the toxic load that's in your body that's continuing to make you eat the things that you don't really want to eat, or you know are bad for you, but you can't help yourself, like that can be solved. And we, you know, 3 days can be long enough to make a change in your body and to experience a radical change. And you might just love it, and you might, you know, just completely change the way that you eat. I've heard so many people go on fasts before, and when they come off of it, they go right back to eating the same things. And that's because we're not addressing the underlying cause, which is the bacteria and the mucoid plaque in the body that it lives in, that gives it a house for it. It's like, you know, if you've got you just gotta kick the nasty stuff out, and then life's different on the other side. And it's been really beautiful to see within myself, and I'm really inspired to share more. So if that's something you're curious about, you can send me a PM or hit yes in the comments, and I'll get back to you on that. And yeah, it's just beautiful. I'm super happy to be of service. I'm really grateful for everybody. Oh, Charles, you weren't worried. Oh, okay. I'm glad you're eating healthy. That's awesome. And it's super important to be healthy mentally too. I'm really glad to hear that for you. And that's, I'm really glad that you've got a happy, healthy son as well. Thank you for commenting. I really appreciate it. I'm going to pop off in maybe about 3-4 minutes. I might laugh for a little bit. If you guys want to laugh along, I won't even, if anybody wants to pop on live with me too, you're welcome to do that. We got Trent, Carrie, Catherine, Tennille, Charles. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Yeah, and if anybody wants to pop on, I can just like click a little button and we can talk for a little bit. Maybe somebody wants to share their story with food or mental illness or fasting or anything like that. Maybe not. And if anybody has questions, I'm happy to hang around for a little bit. And thank you, Carrie. I really appreciate that. I'm glad I've added to your life, and I'm glad you got something out of it. If you guys have enjoyed this, I'd really appreciate sharing the video. It helps me reach a lot more people, and you know, if it was valuable to you, be valuable to people in your life as well. I'm just gonna laugh because, like, hey, I haven't done my 2-minute laugh yet today, and I can. Favorite joke? Anybody have a favorite joke? Catherine, thank you. I love you too. Mwah, mwah. Favorite joke? Otherwise, I'm going to tell my, like, good old, old favorite joke is, like, it's an Elantra. Hi, Anna. Just laughing for the sake of it. What do you call a fish with no eyes? fish with no eyes say when he hits a dam? No, I totally screwed up the punchline. What does a fish with no eyes say when he hits a wall? Damn, I wish I wasn't a fish. What do you call a bear with no teeth? Barely scary? I don't know, Carrie. You gotta tell me if I'm like quivering with anticipation. A gummy bear! Yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Super good. A bear with no teeth. Yes. If you guys have questions or like thoughts about anything that I say too, like if you ask questions, I'll totally make live videos about what your questions are. I do really well when people you know, give me something to respond to. I'm like, oh yeah, I can respond to that, or I can respond to that. So my goal is to do lives every day, and I missed the last 2 days, and you know what, I radically love myself and it's okay. So I'm gonna hop on tomorrow and do another laugh and do another concept, and I'm happy to keep updating about the fasting and how that's going. And we're gonna start adding some superfoods and some super nutrition. Like literally, I suppose I haven't had any proper, I've had like juice and some tinctures and some tea to support my organs, but like I really haven't had any nutrition in the last like 16 days, and I'm totally fine. Isn't that fascinating? Isn't that fascinating? I just thought I'd throw that in there. Anyway, yeah, it just like blasting through the belief systems of what food needs to be, of what food has to be, of what like nutrition has to be, and then on the backside, like moving into something that's really crazy, super healthy and super good and super easy and super affordable. Like, I don't know, it just makes sense to me. I'm really happy about what's going on in my life around food right now. Yeah. And also the practice of saying like no to people around things that like you don't really want to eat. It's pretty powerful as well, getting practice with that. My mom's like, when are you going to eat food again so I can invite you over for dinner? It's like, soonish, I guess. I don't know, I'll let you know. Super funny. Anyway, that's all I got for today. If you guys want more info on the fasting that I'm doing and the system, we can like ship you a package, and all you need to do is add juice, and it's super easy. So I love you, and mwah, have a beautiful, beautiful day. Thank you again to everybody who's been watching. Trent, thanks for being here. Carrie, Catherine. Why does it say +1 and I don't know who it is? That really bothers me, but thank you to the 4th person who's here. I love it. Have a spectacular day, guys. Have a wonderful day to you too, Karen. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Adios, adios. Goodbye. I'll talk to you soon.